In the bustling streets of downtown Seattle, where glass skyscrapers touched the clouds and success stories were born every day, lived a young woman named Rose Chen. At 26, she worked as a junior architect at a small but respected firm, pouring her heart into designing spaces that would one day touch people's lives. Her world was about to change when she met Alexander Parker at a charity gala in 2019. Alex, as he preferred to be called, wasn't born into wealth. He had built his tech startup from scratch, turning his innovative software company into a multi-million-dollar enterprise by the age of 30. His dark eyes carried the intensity of someone who knew what they wanted, and his genuine smile had a way of making everyone feel special. That evening, Rose hadn't planned to attend the gala. Her colleague had fallen ill at the last minute and practically begged her to take her place. "You can't waste a $500 ticket," her colleague had insisted. Rose remembered standing in the corner of the grand ballroom, feeling out of place in her simple black dress among Seattle's elite, when Alex approached her with 2 glasses of champagne. "You look like you could use this as much as I do," he'd said, offering her a glass. These events can be overwhelming. His honesty and down-to-earth attitude instantly put her at ease. They spent the entire evening talking about everything from sustainable architecture to their shared love of hole-in-the-wall ramen shops. Their romance blossomed quickly. Alex took her on adventures across the city, from midnight picnics overlooking the Sound to impromptu cooking sessions in his penthouse kitchen. Rose fell in love with his passionate spirit and the way he treated everyone, from CEOs to parking attendants, with equal respect. 6 months into their relationship, Alex proposed during a private dinner he'd arranged at the Space Needle. Rose said yes without hesitation. Their love story seemed perfect, until it wasn't. The changes were subtle at first. Alex began spending more time at work, claiming his company was going through a crucial expansion phase. Rose understood, she'd seen how hard he'd worked to build his empire. But then came the missed dates, the cold responses to her messages, and the way his eyes would drift to his phone whenever they were together. 3 months into their engagement, Rose discovered she was pregnant. Her hands trembled as she held the positive test, tears of joy mixing with anxiety. She knew Alex had always been hesitant about having children early in their marriage, preferring to focus on his business first. Still, she believed their love was strong enough to weather any storm. She planned a special dinner to tell him the news, cooking his favorite Korean dishes and setting up their rooftop terrace with fairy lights. But when Alex arrived that evening, his expression was distant, almost cold. Before Rose could share her news, he spoke the words that would shatter her world. "I think we need to end this," he said, his voice eerily calm. "The company's expanding internationally, and I need to focus on that. Marriage, family, it's not what I want right now. Maybe not ever." Rose stood there, frozen, the weight of her unspoken news crushing her chest. "But we're engaged," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We talked about our future, about building a life together." Alex's response was clinical, rehearsed. "Things change. People change. I've arranged for you to receive a generous settlement. My lawyer will be in touch." That night, as Rose lay curled up on her bed, her world spinning out of control, she made 2 promises to herself. First, she would never tell Alex about their child. Second, she would rebuild her life stronger than ever, not for revenge, but for herself and her baby. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Alex's lawyer presented her with a settlement agreement, a generous sum that felt like hush money to keep their broken engagement out of the press. Rose signed it without negotiation, wanting nothing more than to close this chapter of her life. She quit her job at the architecture firm, unable to bear the pitying looks from colleagues who'd witnessed her fairy tale romance crumble. With the settlement money, she bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood outside the city and started her own architectural consulting business from home. As her pregnancy progressed, Rose threw herself into preparing for her new life. She converted the spare bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls herself with scenes of mountains and forests. Each brushstroke felt like therapy, helping her process the pain and betrayal. Her parents, who ran a small restaurant in Vancouver, wanted her to move back home. But Rose knew she needed to prove to herself that she could do this on her own. She found strength in the community of single mothers at her prenatal classes and began building a new support system. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sunset, Rose felt her baby kick for the first time. In that moment, something shifted inside her. The pain of Alex's betrayal didn't disappear, but it transformed into something else: determination. She realized that his rejection, as painful as it was, had freed her to create something beautiful on her own terms. She started documenting everything in a journal: her feelings, her hopes for the future, and the truth about why she'd left Seattle's bustling tech scene behind. Someday, she thought, her child would have questions, and these pages would hold the answers. As her due date approached, Rose's small architectural consulting business began to gain traction. She found a niche in designing eco-friendly homes for young families, drawing from her own experience of creating a nurturing space on a budget. Each project felt like a step toward reclaiming her identity beyond being Alex's ex-fiancée. The gossip columns had a field day with their broken engagement. Tech mogul calls off wedding to unknown architect, read one headline. Rose avoided social media and news sites, focusing instead on the life growing inside her. She knew the world of tech startups and million-dollar deals would keep spinning without her, and she was okay with that. Unknown to Rose, her story was far from over. As she prepared for the arrival of her baby, forces were already in motion that would bring her path crossing with Alex's again, but not in the way either of them could have imagined. The quiet life she was building would soon be thrust into a spotlight she never wanted, testing every ounce of strength she'd gained since that fateful night. On a rainy April morning, Rose gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. She named her Lily, after her grandmother who had always taught her that strength blooms in the most unexpected places. As she held her daughter for the first time, Rose felt a surge of love so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. Lily had her mother's dark hair and, to Rose's surprise, Alex's deep brown eyes, a reminder she would carry with her always. The first few months of motherhood tested Rose in ways she never imagined. Sleepless nights merged into exhausting days as she balanced caring for Lily with keeping her fledgling business alive. She worked from her home office with Lily sleeping in a bassinet beside her, taking client calls during nap times and drafting designs late into the night. Her business began to evolve in unexpected ways. A client, impressed with how she designed a sustainable nursery on a budget, referred her to a mommy blog with a large following. The blog feature led to more clients, mostly young families looking for affordable, eco-friendly home renovations. Rose found herself carving out a unique niche in the architecture world, one that felt more meaningful than the glossy high-rises she used to dream about. 1 year after Lily's birth, Rose received an email that made her heart stop. It was from Claire Wong, Alex's former assistant. "I know it's not my place," Claire wrote, "but I thought you should know. Alex is getting married next month to Catherine Mills, the daughter of Mills Technology. It's all over the tech news." Rose sat in her garden, watching Lily toddle after butterflies, and let the news sink in. To her surprise, it didn't hurt as much as she expected. What caught her attention was the mention of Mills Technology, one of the largest competitors to Alex's company. It seemed Alex had found a way to merge business with pleasure after all. That same week, Rose's life took another unexpected turn. A popular home renovation show was filming in Seattle, and one of the producers had seen her blog features. They wanted to interview her about sustainable family-friendly design. Rose almost declined, worried about drawing attention to herself, but something made her say yes. The TV segment was supposed to be simple, just Rose walking through one of her recent projects, explaining her design philosophy. But her natural presence on camera and genuine passion for creating homes that grew with families struck a chord with viewers. The show's producers called the next day, wanting to feature her in more episodes. At first, Rose was hesitant. She had deliberately kept a low profile since leaving Seattle's tech scene. But as she thought about it, she realized she no longer needed to hide. She wasn't just Alex's ex-fiancée anymore, she was a successful businesswoman and mother in her own right. The show's exposure caused Rose's business to explode. Her inbox filled with requests from families across the country wanting her unique approach to sustainable family homes. She hired 2 assistants to help manage the workload and moved her office to a small commercial space, setting up a playroom for Lily next to her desk. As her professional life flourished, Rose noticed her designs becoming bolder, more innovative. She was no longer just adapting spaces, she was revolutionizing how families thought about their homes. Her signature style combined eco-friendly materials with flexible spaces that could evolve as children grew. Each project felt like a statement: sustainability and luxury weren't mutually exclusive. One evening, while reviewing plans for a new project, Rose discovered something interesting. Several of her clients were employees at major tech companies, including Alex's. Through casual conversations, she learned that his company was planning to build a new headquarters, one that would showcase their commitment to environmental responsibility. The irony wasn't lost on Rose. Here she was, becoming known for exactly the kind of sustainable design Alex's company now needed. She allowed herself a small smile, remembering how he had once dismissed her ideas about incorporating green spaces into urban buildings as impractical dreams. 2 years after Lily's birth, Rose's work caught the attention of Future Homes, a prestigious architecture magazine. They wanted to feature her in their Innovators Under 35 issue. The photo shoot took place in her own home, with Lily making an unexpected appearance, climbing onto her mother's lap during the interview. The article, when published, painted a picture of a rising star in sustainable architecture. It mentioned nothing about her past engagement or connection to the tech world. Instead, it focused on her journey as a single mother who had built a successful business while revolutionizing family-friendly design. The magazine spread included photos of Rose and Lily in their garden, surrounded by the native plants and butterfly bushes they had planted together. In one photo, Lily wore her favorite yellow dress, her dark curls catching the sunlight as she helped her mother water their vegetables. The image perfectly captured what Rose had built, a life full of purpose and joy, far removed from the glittering tech world she'd once been part of. What Rose didn't know was that this magazine would find its way to Alex's desk. His new headquarters project was facing criticism for its environmental impact, and his team had been researching innovative architects in the sustainable design space. The moment he saw Rose's photo, with a child who looked so remarkably like him, his carefully constructed world began to crack. But Rose remained unaware of the storm brewing in Alex's mind. She was too busy preparing for her biggest project yet, a revolutionary community development that would showcase everything she had learned about creating sustainable, family-friendly spaces. It would be her first time working on something of this scale, and she was determined to prove that her vision could work beyond individual homes. As she tucked Lily into bed that night, Rose felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her daughter was growing into a confident, curious child, and her business was thriving on her own terms. The revenge she had once dreamed of no longer seemed important, she had built something far more valuable than any act of vengeance could provide. Little did she know, life was about to bring her face to face with her past in a way she never expected. The quiet strength she had built over the years would soon be tested, as the worlds she had so carefully kept separate were about to collide. The morning that changed everything started like any other. Rose was reviewing blueprints for her community development project while Lily, now 3, colored quietly at her special desk in the office. The phone call came from an unexpected source, the CEO of Greenbuild, one of the largest sustainable construction companies in the country. "We've seen your work, Ms. Chen," the CEO said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. We're looking for an innovative architect to lead the design of a new tech headquarters in Seattle. Your approach to sustainable design is exactly what we need. Rose's heart skipped a beat when he named the client, Parker Technologies. Alex's company. She gripped her desk, steadying herself as the CEO continued outlining the project details. The budget was enormous, the scale unprecedented. It would be her biggest opportunity yet, and her worst nightmare. "I'll need time to consider," Rose managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. After hanging up, she watched Lily playing with her blocks, building towers, and knocking them down with gleeful determination. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here was a chance to prove herself on the grandest scale possible, but it meant stepping back into Alex's world. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, Rose sat in her garden, the space that had become her thinking sanctuary. The practical side of her knew this project could cement her reputation in the architecture world. The mother in her wondered if this was how Alex would finally discover Lily's existence. The woman who had pieced herself back together questioned if she was strong enough to face him again. She called her parents for advice. Her father, wise from years of running their restaurant through ups and downs, said something that stuck with her: sometimes, the best revenge is showing someone exactly what they missed out on. The next day, Rose accepted the project with one condition: she would deal only with Greenbuild's team, not directly with Parker Technologies. The CEO agreed, impressed by her professional boundaries. Rose threw herself into the design work, channeling all her experience and innovation into creating something extraordinary. Her concept was bold: a building that would literally breathe with the city. Living walls would purify air pollution, rooftop gardens would provide food for the employee cafeteria, and flexible workspaces would adapt to changing needs without requiring renovation. It was everything Alex had once called impractical, proven practical. Weeks into the project, Rose was working late at her office when her assistant rushed in. "You need to see this," she said, pulling up a news article on her tablet. The headline made Rose's blood run cold: "Tech mogul Alex Parker's marriage to Catherine Mills ends after just 2 years." The article detailed how Catherine had left Alex for his main competitor, taking sensitive company information with her. His perfect business merger had turned into a corporate nightmare. Rose felt a complex mix of emotions: not satisfaction at his misfortune, but a strange sense of cosmic justice. The next morning, an email arrived from Greenbuild. Parker Technologies wanted to schedule an in-person design presentation. Rose knew this moment would come, but she hadn't expected it so soon. She spent hours preparing, not just the design presentation, but herself. She chose a simple but elegant outfit, styled her hair the way she wore it now, shorter, more confident, and asked her most trusted employee to watch Lily. The presentation was scheduled at Greenbuild's Seattle office. Rose arrived early, setting up her materials with practiced calm. When Alex walked in with his executive team, she felt rather than saw his presence. The room fell silent. Their eyes met across the conference table. Alex looked older, the stress of recent events visible in the lines around his eyes. Recognition, shock, and something else, regret, flashed across his face. But Rose was already launching into her presentation, her voice clear and professional. For the next hour, she commanded the room, presenting her vision with the confidence of someone who knew their worth. She watched Alex's expression change from surprise to genuine amazement as she detailed innovations he had once dismissed as impossible. The other executives were clearly impressed, taking notes and nodding enthusiastically. During the question period, Alex finally spoke. "This is remarkable work," he said, his voice carrying a note of hesitation she'd never heard before. "But the cost of implementing these sustainable systems." Rose was ready for this. "Would be offset within 5 years through energy savings and tax incentives," she finished, pulling up detailed financial projections. "I've already secured preliminary approval from the city for additional green building credits." The meeting ended with handshakes and congratulations. As the room cleared, Alex lingered. Rose busied herself gathering her materials, her heart pounding. She could feel him struggling to find words. "Rose," he finally said, "I had no idea you'd become so successful in sustainable design. I remember when you used to talk about these concepts, and I dismissed them," she supplied, looking up to meet his gaze steadily. "Things change. People change." She turned to leave, but his next words stopped her. "I saw the magazine article," he said quietly. "The little girl in the photos, she has my eyes, doesn't she?" Rose felt the world tilt slightly. This was the moment she had both dreaded and anticipated for 3 years. She turned back to face him, her voice calm but firm. "Yes, she does. Her name is Lily. She's 3 years old, and she's the reason I found the strength to build everything you see today." The color drained from Alex's face as he did the math. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "You made it very clear that family wasn't part of your plan," Rose replied. "So I made my own plans." She walked out of the conference room, leaving Alex standing there, the weight of what he had carelessly thrown away finally settling on his shoulders. As she drove home to Lily, Rose realized something: this moment wasn't about revenge at all. It was about coming full circle, about proving to herself that every choice she'd made had led her exactly where she needed to be. But life had more surprises in store. The ripples from this revelation would spread far beyond their brief encounter, affecting both their lives in ways neither could have anticipated. The real test of Rose's strength was only just beginning. The days following the presentation became a blur of emotions and unexpected developments. Rose threw herself into work, trying to maintain normalcy for Lily's sake, but her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from Greenbuild executives praising her design. They wanted to fast-track the project, impressed by how her presentation had captured everyone's attention, especially Alex's. One evening, while Rose was cooking dinner with Lily perched on a kitchen stool helping to stir pasta sauce, her lawyer called. "Alex Parker's legal team has been in touch," she said carefully. "They're requesting a DNA test and discussing potential custody arrangements." The wooden spoon clattered from Rose's hand, making Lily jump. "No," Rose said firmly, moving away so her daughter wouldn't hear. "He gave up any right to be in her life when he walked away. He didn't even know she existed until last week. Unfortunately," her lawyer explained, "he has rights as the biological father. We can fight this, but it could get messy. He's offering to settle generously, full financial support, trust funds, education." "I don't want his money," Rose interrupted. "I've built our life without him. Lily doesn't need to know her mother was just another strategic mistake in his corporate climbing game." That night, after tucking Lily in, Rose found an email from Alex. Her finger hovered over the delete button, but something made her open it. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you. What I did was unforgivable, and seeing the amazing life you've built only shows me how blind I was. But please, give me a chance to know my daughter. I'm not the same person who walked away 3 years ago. The merger marriage, the corporate games, it all feels meaningless now. I'll accept whatever terms you set." Rose sat in her garden, remembering how this space had witnessed every major decision in her new life. The moon cast shadows through the butterfly bushes she and Lily had planted together. Could she deny her daughter the chance to know her father? But could she trust Alex not to hurt them again? The next morning, she received another surprise. The sustainability magazine that had featured her was planning a follow-up story. They'd heard about her winning the Parker Technologies project and wanted to profile her journey from small-scale residential projects to major corporate developments. The irony was almost too much. While dropping Lily at daycare, Rose noticed a sleek black car parked across the street. Her heart sank when she recognized Alex's driver. He was watching them, trying to glimpse the daughter he'd never known. Rose hurried Lily inside, anger and fear mixing in her chest. This wasn't how she wanted things to play out. That afternoon, during a project meeting at Greenbuild, Rose learned something that changed everything. Alex had been pushing back against his board's suggestion to outsource the construction to a cheaper, less environmentally conscious company. He was fighting to keep her complete vision intact, even though it would cost the company millions more. "He's been different since your presentation," one of the executives mentioned. "More focused on long-term impact than immediate profits." Some board members are concerned, but others say it's the first time they've seen real leadership from him. Rose didn't know what to make of this information. Was this another corporate strategy, or had seeing her success, and learning about Lily, genuinely changed something in him? Her answer came unexpectedly. While reviewing construction bids in her office, Rose received a call from Claire, Alex's former assistant who had warned her about his marriage years ago. "You need to know something," Claire said. "After your presentation, Alex turned down a major merger that would have tripled the company's value." "Why would he do that?" Rose asked, puzzled. "The deal would have meant moving the company to New York," Claire explained. "He said he couldn't leave Seattle now. Everyone thinks he's lost his mind, but I've never seen him more certain about anything." That evening, a courier delivered a package to Rose's house. Inside was a worn leather journal with a note: "I started writing this the day after your presentation. It's everything I should have said 3 years ago, and everything I want to tell Lily someday, if you'll let me. No lawyers, no custody battles. Just the truth." Rose put Lily to bed early that night and sat down with the journal. As she read, tears rolled down her cheeks. Page after page revealed a man wrestling with his mistakes, documenting his journey from ambitious tech mogul to someone beginning to understand the real cost of success. He wrote about seeing Lily's photo in the magazine, how his heart had stopped when he recognized his own eyes looking back at him. He described the shame of realizing that while he'd been playing corporate chess games, Rose had been building something genuine and meaningful. The journal ended with a simple truth: "I thought I was protecting my dreams by pushing away anything that might distract from them. Instead, I was hiding from what really matters." The next day, Rose made 2 decisions. First, she called her lawyer to request a meeting with Alex, not about custody arrangements, but about finding a way forward that put Lily's well-being first. Second, she accepted the magazine's request for a follow-up story, but with a condition: she would tell the whole truth about her journey, including the parts she'd been hiding. As she drove home that evening, Rose thought about how life had a way of coming full circle. 3 years ago, she'd dreamed of revenge, of making Alex regret his choices. Now that she had inadvertently achieved just that, she realized revenge wasn't what she wanted anymore. What she wanted was for her daughter to grow up knowing that sometimes life's biggest heartbreaks can lead to its greatest blessings. But the story wasn't over yet. The next few weeks would test everyone's intentions and reveal whether people really could change. The tech world was buzzing with rumors about Alex's strange new priorities, and Rose's rising star in sustainable architecture was drawing attention she wasn't sure she wanted. As she prepared for her first real conversation with Alex since the presentation, Rose knew one thing for certain: whatever happened next would reshape all their lives in unexpected ways. The meeting was set for a quiet coffee shop far from both their usual haunts. Rose arrived early, watching steam rise from her untouched cup as she waited for Alex. She'd spent hours preparing what to say, but all her planned words vanished when he walked in, carrying a small pink gift bag. "I saw this in a store window," he said awkwardly, placing the bag on the table. "I don't know if Lily likes stuffed animals, or if she's too old for them now, or..." "She loves them," Rose interrupted softly. "Especially pandas." Inside the bag was a small stuffed panda wearing a tiny architect's hard hat. The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught her off guard. They talked for hours. Alex explained how his obsession with success had roots in his own childhood, growing up with parents who measured love in achievements. Rose shared stories about Lily, her first words, her love of building blocks, how she insisted on wearing yellow rain boots even on sunny days. She asks about her dad sometimes, Rose admitted. I tell her he lives far away, working on important things. I never wanted her to feel abandoned. Alex's hands tightened around his coffee cup. I want to do this right, he said. No courts, no lawyers. I'll follow your lead. I want a chance to be in her life. Even if it's just as a friend of her mom's at first. The next few weeks were a careful dance of boundaries and trust building. Rose agreed to let Alex visit their house, watching from the kitchen as he sat on the floor with Lily, helping her build increasingly elaborate block towers. Lily, with a child's innocent curiosity, took to Mommy's friend Mr. Alex immediately. But the outside world wasn't making things easy. Tech blogs were buzzing with speculation about Alex's changed behavior at Parker Technologies. The company's stock had taken a hit after he canceled the New York merger, and board members were growing restless. Some blamed Rose's influence, suggesting she was manipulating the situation for personal gain. The pressure peaked when photos appeared online, Alex leaving Rose's house, Lily visible in the background. The captions were brutal, tech mogul's secret love child revealed. Rose's phone exploded with calls from reporters, each wanting the exclusive story. That evening, Alex showed up at her door unannounced, looking more disheveled than she'd ever seen him. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice rough. I never wanted to drag you and Lily into this media circus. The board is threatening to vote me out if I don't get my personal life under control. Rose invited him in, putting on the kettle while Lily slept upstairs. What are you going to do? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. She'd seen this before, Alex choosing his company over everything else. But this time was different. I called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow, he said. I'm going to tell them the truth, all of it. How I let my ambition blind me to what really matters. How watching you build something meaningful while staying true to your values showed me everything wrong with how I've been running the company. You could lose everything you've built, Rose warned. I already lost everything that matters once, he replied. I won't make that mistake again. The next morning, Rose opened her laptop to find Alex's name trending online. He had done more than just come clean to his board, he'd called a press conference. The video was everywhere, Alex Parker, tech mogul, publicly acknowledging his past mistakes and announcing a complete restructuring of Parker Technologies. 3 years ago, I walked away from someone who showed me a different way of measuring success, he said to the cameras. I chose profit over purpose, expansion over ethics. Today, that changes. Parker Technologies will be transitioning to become a leader in sustainable technology, with a focus on innovations that benefit families and communities. The announcement sent shockwaves through the tech world. Some called it corporate suicide, others praised it as visionary leadership. Rose watched the chaos unfold from her office, where she was finalizing details for the headquarters project. The design had evolved into something even more ambitious, not just a sustainable building, but a blueprint for how technology companies could prioritize both profit and social responsibility. That weekend, Rose invited Alex to join her and Lily at their community garden plot. As Lily excitedly showed him how to plant tomato seedlings, Rose noticed something she hadn't seen before. Alex had dirt under his perfectly manicured nails, and he didn't seem to mind at all. The board voted, he said quietly while Lily was distracted by a butterfly. It was close, but they're giving me 6 months to prove the new direction can work. The headquarters project is key, if we can show that sustainable development can be profitable. It will work, Rose interrupted. Not because of revenge or redemption, but because it's the right thing to do. Later that evening, after Lily was asleep, Rose found Alex sitting in her garden, looking at the stars. I used to think power meant having the biggest office in the tallest building, he said. But watching you these past weeks, how you've created something real, something that helps people, that's true power. Rose sat beside him, feeling the weight of their shared history and the possibility of their future. "You know this won't be easy," she said. "Trust takes time to rebuild." "I know," he nodded. "But for the first time in my life, I'm ready to take things slow, to build something that lasts." As they sat in comfortable silence, Rose realized that the revenge she'd once dreamed of had transformed into something entirely different, a chance for healing, not just for them, but for the legacy they would leave for Lily. But as the headquarters project moved forward and Alex's company entered its transformation phase, new challenges emerged that would test everyone's commitment to this fragile new beginning. The real question wasn't whether people could change, but whether that change could withstand the pressures of the world they'd built their lives in. The autumn winds brought change to Seattle, scattering golden leaves across the construction site of Parker Technology's new headquarters. Rose stood at the edge of the property, watching workers install the living walls she'd designed. The building was taking shape, its innovative features already drawing attention from environmental groups and business publications alike. But success had brought unexpected complications. Rose's inbox was flooded with speaking requests, television appearances, and book deals, all wanting to tell the story of the architect who'd transformed her heartbreak into a sustainable empire. Meanwhile, Alex was fighting daily battles with shareholders who claimed his new direction was too idealistic for the current market. One rainy morning, Rose arrived at the construction site to find protesters gathered at the entrance. They carried signs accusing Parker Technologies of greenwashing, using sustainable design as a publicity stunt to cover past environmental damages. The irony wasn't lost on her, she'd once made similar accusations herself. "Mom, why are those people angry?" Lily asked from the back seat. Rose had been forced to pick her up early from daycare after a reporter showed up there asking questions. At 4 years old, Lily was becoming increasingly aware of the complicated world around her. "Sometimes people have trouble believing that other people can change," Rose explained carefully, watching her daughter's reflection in the rearview mirror. "Like how you didn't like broccoli before, but now you do. Like how Mr. Alex changed?" Lily asked innocently. "He builds nice towers with me now." The simple wisdom in her daughter's words brought tears to Rose's eyes. Over the past months, Alex had proved his commitment to change in ways both small and significant. He'd never missed a scheduled visit with Lily, even flying back early from important business trips. He attended her preschool art show, standing proudly in the back while she explained her finger-painted masterpiece to other parents. But the pressure was taking its toll on him. Rose could see it in the new lines around his eyes, the way his shoulders tensed during board meetings. The 6-month deadline to prove his new vision was approaching, and despite the headquarters project being on schedule, the company's stock price continued to fall. One evening, after Lily was asleep, Alex called Rose in a panic. "The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow," he said, his voice tight. "Our biggest investor is threatening to pull out unless we scale back the sustainable initiatives. They want to cut the headquarters budget by half." Rose felt her heart sink. The design wasn't just about creating a beautiful building, it was meant to prove that sustainable architecture could work on a corporate scale. Scaling back now would validate every critic who claimed it was just an expensive publicity stunt. "What do you need from me?" she asked, already knowing the answer would test them both. "Come to the meeting," Alex said. "Not as my architect or Lily's mother, but as someone who understood the value of sustainable design before it was profitable. Help me show them what's possible." The next morning, Rose stood before Parker Technology's board of directors, her presentation ready. But instead of showing them blueprints and cost projections, she pulled up photos of their test garden, the small plot where they were growing plants for the building's living walls. "Last week, I brought a group of local schoolchildren here," she began, showing pictures of kids planting seedlings. "They're learning about photosynthesis in science class, but here they saw how buildings can help clean our air. One little girl told me she wants to be an architect now, to help save the planet. She clicked to the next slide, Lily at the community garden, teaching Alex how to check if the tomatoes were ripe. Change isn't just about profit margins, Rose continued. It's about the legacy we leave for our children. Parker Technologies has the chance to be more than just another successful company. You can be the company that helped change how the world thinks about sustainable business. The room was silent when she finished. Then one of the older board members spoke up. Ms. Chen, your passion is admirable, but business decisions can't be based on idealism alone. Actually, they can, a new voice interrupted. Everyone turned to see Catherine Mills, Alex's ex-wife, walking into the boardroom. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. Rose felt her breath catch. Catherine walked to the front of the room, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. My father's company just completed a market analysis of sustainable technology trends, she announced. We were planning to use it for our own expansion, but... She glanced at Alex, then Rose. Let's just say I owe someone an apology for past mistakes. She handed out folders to each board member. The data shows that companies implementing comprehensive sustainable practices see a 40% increase in customer loyalty and a 25% reduction in operating costs within 3 years. Parker Technologies isn't just making an ethical choice, it's positioning itself ahead of an inevitable market shift. The mood in the room changed as board members flipped through the reports. Rose caught Alex's eye across the table, seeing the same surprise she felt reflected there. Catherine had been the last person they'd expected support from. After the meeting, Catherine pulled Rose aside. I didn't do this for Alex, she said firmly. I did it because you reminded me why I got into technology in the first place, to make things better, not just more profitable. That evening, Rose sat in her garden, processing the day's events. Alex joined her, bringing news that the board had voted to maintain full funding for the headquarters project. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. You know, Alex said quietly, 5 years ago, I thought success meant having the biggest company, the most power. Now I measure it differently. How? Rose asked, though she already knew the answer. By the smile on Lily's face when she shows me her latest building block creation. By the way you light up when you talk about sustainable design. By the chance to build something that matters. But as they celebrated this victory, neither knew that the biggest challenge was still to come. The next few weeks would test not just their professional commitments, but their personal ones as well. The question wasn't just whether their sustainable vision could succeed, but whether the fragile trust they'd rebuilt could withstand the storms ahead. The grand opening of Parker Technologies' new headquarters was scheduled for a bright spring morning, exactly 3 years after Rose's life-changing presentation. The building stood as a testament to transformation, both architectural and personal. Its living walls bloomed with native flowers, solar panels gleamed in the sunlight, and the rooftop garden had already become a sanctuary for local wildlife. But 2 days before the opening, disaster struck. A major storm hit Seattle, causing flooding across the city. Rose received an urgent call at midnight. The building's innovative water recycling system was being pushed to its limits. If it failed, it would validate every critic who claimed sustainable architecture couldn't withstand real-world challenges. Without hesitation, Rose and Alex rushed to the site. They worked through the night alongside the maintenance team, adjusting systems and reinforcing protections. Rose's hands were muddy, her hair soaked, but her eyes shone with determination. This building wasn't just a project anymore, it was proof that dreams could be built into reality. Just like old times, Alex said as they monitored the water levels. You and me, solving problems at midnight. Rose smiled, remembering their late-night discussions years ago, when her ideas about sustainable architecture had seemed like impossible dreams to him. The difference is, now we're building something that matters. By dawn, the crisis had passed. Not only had the building systems held, but they'd actually helped prevent flooding in the surrounding area. The news quickly spread. Parker Technology's controversial headquarters had just proved its worth in the most practical way possible. The morning of the opening ceremony arrived with clear skies and a sense of anticipation. Journalists gathered, environmental activists watched with cautious optimism, and corporate leaders waited to see if this new model of business was truly viable. Rose stood at the podium, Lily holding her hand, wearing a yellow dress and a tiny hard hat that matched her mother's. Alex stood nearby, looking not at the cameras or the gathered crowd, but at his daughter and the woman who had taught him the true meaning of success. 3 years ago, Rose began, I stood in a conference room and presented a vision that many people called impossible. Today, we're not just opening a building, we're opening a door to a new way of thinking about business, about sustainability, and about what we owe to future generations. She gestured to the living walls, where butterflies danced among the flowers. This building breathes with our city. It turns rain into resource, sunlight into power, and waste into opportunity. But more importantly, it stands as proof that when we dare to change our perspective, impossible dreams become possible futures. The ceremony continued with tours and presentations, but the real moment of triumph came later that afternoon. Rose found Alex in the rooftop garden, sitting with Lily as she carefully watered the vegetables they had planted together. The little girl was explaining to her father, with 4-year-old seriousness, why talking to plants helped them grow better. She has your vision, Alex said softly as Rose joined them. And my stubbornness. A dangerous combination, Rose laughed, but her eyes were warm. The past year had brought changes none of them had expected. The building's success had sparked a revolution in corporate architecture. Rose's firm was flooded with requests from companies wanting to follow Parker Technology's lead. Alex had expanded the company's sustainable technology division, focusing on innovations that would make eco-friendly design accessible to smaller businesses and communities. But the biggest changes had been personal. After months of careful progress, they had finally told Lily that Alex was her father. Her response had been characteristically practical. I knew he built good towers. That's why I let him stay. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the rooftop garden, Alex turned to Rose. You know, when you first accepted this project, I thought you were seeking revenge, making me face everything I'd thrown away. Rose watched Lily examining a ladybug on a tomato plant. Maybe I was, at first, she admitted. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about revenge and started being about redemption, not just yours, but mine too. I had to prove to myself that I could build something meaningful out of heartbreak. You built more than that, Alex said quietly. You built a future. Later that evening, they hosted a small dinner in the building's community space. Catherine was there, now a vocal advocate for sustainable technology. Rose's parents had flown in from Vancouver, bringing enough food to feed an army. Lily flitted between guests, proudly showing off her building. As Rose looked around the room, she realized how far they'd all come from that charity gala where she'd first met Alex. The revenge she'd once dreamed of had transformed into something far more powerful, the ability to change not just their own lives, but the lives of others. The next morning, Rose arrived early at her office to find an envelope on her desk. Inside was a child's drawing, clearly Lily's work, showing 3 figures standing in front of a green building. Below it, in Alex's handwriting, was a note. Thank you for showing me that the greatest success stories aren't built on profit margins or stock prices, but on the courage to admit our mistakes and the wisdom to learn from them. You didn't just design a sustainable building, you designed a sustainable future. And thanks to you, our daughter will grow up knowing that the most powerful form of revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you, but about building something better in its place. Rose pinned the drawing to her office wall, right next to her first sustainable design sketch from years ago. Outside her window, the morning sun reflected off the living walls of the headquarters, making the building seem to glow from within. Butterflies danced among the flowers, and in the rooftop garden, the vegetables Lily had planted were beginning to sprout. This wasn't the ending she had imagined when Alex had walked away 4 years ago. It was better. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. And in the end, Rose had built something far more valuable than a sustainable building or a successful career. She had built a legacy of hope, proving that even the deepest wounds could become foundations for something beautiful. As she watched Lily's yellow rain boots splash through puddles on their way into the building that morning, Rose smiled, knowing that her daughter would grow up understanding the most important lesson of all, that true success isn't measured in dollars or square footage, but in the positive change we create in the world around us.